What's up, everybody? It's JT Sports Match, you guys, with another video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Minnesota Vikings impact players for the 2019 NFL season. Now, Adam Thielen had a career year last year, and his season last year was very hard to top, considering the fact that his last couple of seasons have been very, very outstanding. But last year, Adam Thielen just went crazy. 1,373 receiving yards, 113 receptions, 9 touchdowns. Adam Thielen is a monster. It's not I was just so impressed about how good Adam Thielen was. When we think about Adam Thielen's story, how he even got to the NFL, man. This man played for a college that I never even heard about, who got to the NFL as an undrafted free agent, and then find a way to stand on the roster, finally got his opportunity, and boy, he has took his opportunity and ran. One of the best wide receivers in the NFL, just outstanding. And I find it pretty hard to. I'm not going to down him. I think he has the talent to repeat his season, but when we look at his numbers last year, I mean, they're going to be really, really hard to repeat, man. But I think Adam Thielen is one of the best wide receivers in all of football. Last season was just very outstanding, and I think he has the potential to repeat those numbers. But I think he comes a little bit back down. I think he has over 1,000 receiving yards, probably 1,100. Probably has about not over 100 receptions as well. Probably about the same amount of touchdowns. It's just pretty hard to see him topping that season because that season last year was very, very phenomenal, and it's very hard for wide receivers to replicate those stats, man. So Adam Thielen, very good season. I'm expecting him to keep up the consistency and production in 2019. Next up, we have fellow wide receiver who lines up on the opposing side of Adam Thielen, wide receiver Stephon Diggs. He had a very good season in his own right, 1,021 receiving yards, 102 receptions. He also had 9 touchdowns as well. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen is more of the guy, the move the chains guy. Stephon Diggs is more of the, give you those big plays after the catch and stuff like that. Very good wide receiver. Stephon Diggs, I think he'll probably have another solid season, over 1,000 yards receiving. If he's able to stay healthy, he'll probably have 100 receptions as well. I think he'll probably have a little bit more touchdowns. I think he'll probably have about 11 or 12, just because what he's able to do with the ball in his hands and the yards after catch. So overall, I think Stephon Diggs is going to be in for a pretty solid year as well. Next up, we have quarterback Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins, you put him in that Matthew Stat Pafford category. All he does is pass stats. He can't win you the big games. Did he win against New England? How many games did he win against Green Bay this year? Even though Green Bay wasn't the Green Bay that we're accustomed to seeing, Kirk Cousins is the definition of mediocrity at its finest. Overpaid, overpriced, and overrated. 4,298 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, completed 70% of his passes. The stats are a mother freaking lie with Kirk Cousins, man. Because Kirk Cousins is really overrated. Don't know how he's making $84 million, but I mean, guaranteed. But I mean, hey, man, I'm not the dude making the general manager decisions for the Minnesota Vikings, but Kirk Cousins, man, the stats are a lie. Kirk Cousins is a guy who's going to have good stats, but he's not a guy who's going to win you the big games. You think he would be way better than what he was with the Washington Redskins, considering the supporting cast that he had around him: Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook. But I mean, I'm not going to put the whole entire blame on Kirk Cousins. The offensive line was not very good at all. So with the offensive line being improved, I'm expecting Kirk Cousins to go out there and help the Minnesota Vikings win the NFC North, because the NFC North, anybody could win it. The teams are so evenly close and talent wise. Minnesota has a very good defense. So does Chicago. Green Bay's defense is improving. Don't know how it's going to look, but he needs to go out and win some games for the Minnesota Vikings. They were one of the biggest disappointments in all of football last year, considering the fact that they almost went to the Super Bowl with Case Keenum. So Kirk Cousins I have on this list. Next up, I have halfback Dalvin Cook. Now, Dalvin Cook missed 5 games last year, had 615 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 4.6 yards per carry. Dalvin Cook disappointed. A lot of people had very big expectations since we already saw the explosion that he had on his rookie season before he went down with that injury. And it wasn't his fault. The offensive line was not good at all. And it was amazing that he was able to get the stats that he had this year. But with the offensive line being improved, the offensive line still has some work to go. But Dalvin Cook should be in for a pretty solid season if he's able to get some solid blocking from the offensive line, and I think he could make the Pro Bowl. The offensive line is actually ends up being pretty improved. Um, all they just need to have is a Seattle Seahawks type improvement when it comes to the offensive line department. The Seattle Seahawks didn't really sign nobody notable last season and free agency, but the offense was very much improved. And the Minnesota Vikings can get some improvement up front. Dalvin Cook should be in for a pretty solid year. Next up, we have tight end Irv Smith, who the Minnesota Vikings selected in the second round of this year's NFL draft. Have him on this list over Kyle Rudolph because I don't think Kyle Rudolph is going to be on the roster pretty much longer. I saw some news that the Minnesota Vikings offered him an extension, but he didn't agree to it. So I just think that they're just going to go ahead and they're just going to trade him away. And they never probably would have drafted Irv Smith if they were confident in Kyle Rudolph, but I guess they're just going to trade him away. I saw some talks earlier with him and the New England Patriots and discussions. God, I hope that was false because him to the Patriots, oh my goodness. But yeah, I think Irv Smith, he's better than He's going to be better than Kyle Rudolph because Irv Smith with Alabama was very electric with the ball in his hands, and this is a guy who can take it to the house every time he gets the ball in his hands. Not OJ Howard like when it comes in terms of his speed and elusiveness, but he's a guy who can make a few moves on linebackers and stuff like that. Has very good hands, so he's going to be a very reliable safety blanket in the red zone and on third downs for Kirk Cousins to target. Next up, we have defensive end Danielle Hunter. He went to the Pro Bowl last season, had 72 tackles, 14 and a half sacks, was very good for the Minnesota Vikings, was their best pass rusher on the team last season. Very, very productive. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can come close to replicating those stats from last season. I think he'll have 10 sacks. And the defensive line for the Minnesota Vikings is very, very good. You got Linval Joseph up there. You'll have Anthony Barr, who is a pretty good pass rusher. So the Minnesota Vikings have one of the most talented defenses in all of the NFL. And Danielle Hunter, to me, was the best guy who they had on that defensive line. There was a lot of good guys who you could make a good case to put at this spot on this list. But I had to put Danielle Hunter just because of the production that he had last season with having 14 and a half sacks. And I think he's going to have a pretty solid 2019 season. Think he probably has about 12 sacks. I'll be surprised if he has about the same amount of sacks that he had last season if he has 14 or more sacks, but I think 12 sacks is my expectations for him going into 2019. Now, linebacker Anthony Barr, you guys probably already heard the story. Was supposed to sign with the New York Jets and free agency, but backed out the deal. Ended up going back to Minnesota. Last year, he went to Pro Bowl, had 55 tackles, 3 sacks, and 2 pass deflections. And he's a pretty solid linebacker. Fan favorite down there in Minnesota. They love him a lot. He's been to 4 straight Pro Bowls. He went to his first Pro Bowl actually and 2015 and has been to the Pro Bowl ever since then. Very solid linebacker. And I think he's going to have a key part of this Minnesota Vikings defense in 2019. Next up, we have cornerback Xavier Rhodes. Now, Xavier Rhodes, 47 tackles, 1 reception, 7 pass deflections. He has been thrown under the bus by Mike Zimmer, man. Head coach Mike Zimmer said that he needs to, and I quote, play up to the level of that contract. Now, Xavier Rhodes did not really have a good season or the season that we're used to seeing Xavier Rhodes play. And him and Trey Waynes have quote and reports recently have been they're not on the trade block, but if a team comes with a solid offer, they're willing to give those guys up for the right offer. So Xavier Rhodes, man, he's a guy who's going to have to step up this year. I was also very disappointed in his play as well. He is a much better cornerback than what he played up to last season. And I think this season he needs to have a bounce back year And if he doesn't have a bounce back year, you could watch for this guy to end up being traded or released next season. Next up, we have safety Harrison Smith. Went to the Pro Bowl last season, had 84 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 interceptions, 6 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries. One of the best safeties in all of the NFL. Can do everything, tackle, very good in coverage, and he is, to me, the best player on this Minnesota Vikings defense. And that's a very good accomplishment because the Minnesota Vikings have a bunch of talented players on this defense, but I think Harrison Smith is the best out of everybody on that whole entire defense. He's a ball hawk, big hitter, can do everything. He's just a playmaker. He's probably the modern day version of Troy Polamalu, in my opinion. He can just do everything, ball hawk, makes plays in the secondary, and he is without a doubt an impact player for the Minnesota Vikings going into the 2019 NFL season. Next up, we have linebacker Eric Kendricks. Now, I think Eric Kendricks is a pretty underrated linebacker. Doesn't get a lot of attention, but he had 108 tackles, 2 interceptions, 7 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery. Very solid linebacker. He's solid in coverage, solid linebacker overall. I think he's very underrated. Doesn't really get a lot of attention that he deserves, in my opinion. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this list down in the comment section down below. Make sure to like the video and subscribe for more NFL videos and content. And thanks for watching.